Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Hi, this is David H. Lawrence, the 17th. Download the podcast. Save the world.
Hey, Primatech peeps. Welcome back to the Primatech Files, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things Heroes and Heroes Reborn related. I am Lilith, and joining me, as always, is...
It's me, it's Ricky. Hello.
And we have a very special guest for you, David H. Lawrence, the 17th.
Hello.
We want to thank you so much for joining us.
Well, you're quite welcome. I appreciate you asking, and please know that I will continue to support your ongoing projects, and I believe that your families are fine, upstanding citizens.
Thank you.
You know, it's really funny because you're dubbed as the first podcaster, and I've been podcasting for a while, and your website is full of a lot of useful information, not only for podcasters, but for voiceover acting and things like that, and I thought that was really cool.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I started podcasting before it was called podcasting. I actually did a radio show in the mid-'90s that was only on the air on Sundays, but all the good stuff happened during the week. So what I thought might be cool, there's this brand new piece of software out, brand new service called Progressive Networks, and it used to be called that. Now it's called Real Audio. And at the time, they had an encoder that would allow you to not only create a streaming file, but also a file that could be downloaded and played right from the hard drive, as a local file. And so that's what I was using. I was using the original Progressive Networks encoder 1.0. And instead of using RSS to deliver a podcast, I was delivering it via email. And in those days, the email size limit was 1 megabyte. So if you were sending to AOL, or you're sending to Yahoo, or you're sending to Excited Home, or CompuServe, or any of the old, before Gmail came around, and before any of the new services came around. So what I had to do was to do a little reverse math and figure out how long I could speak and still have a finally encoded, not only Real Audio encoded or Progressive Networks encoded, but also encoded from 8-bit to 7-bit for the internet file. And it turns out that I could have a podcast of exactly 10 minutes and 43 seconds. And that, on a daily basis, I would put out to, I had a subscriber list of about 5,000 or 6,000 people. This was like 1994, 1995, whenever they first came out. All I was trying to do was keep people interested in what I was talking about on the weekends and remind them to tune in on Sunday because, nothing happened in technology Sunday morning. But, all during the week, obviously things happened. And rather than giving them that news 4 or 5 days later, I thought I'll do a daily, basically, roundup of the news. And I got a call one day from Geico. I was in Washington, D.C., and they were based in Bethesda. And they said, hey, a couple of our people here listen to this. They didn't say podcast. They listened to this newscast that you send out via email. I called it the Personal Netcast. And it was really funny because years later, Leo Laporte said, you should change the word podcast to netcast. And I'm like, great, go for it. So the guy said, we were wondering how many subscribers you have. And I said, 5,800. And he said, well, what would you charge to put an ad for Geico, or would you even be willing to? I was working in local radio then, so they knew me from the radio. And I said, sure. And out of my butt, I pulled $500. So every day, I would do a live spot in my podcast, and I would get a check at the end of the month for like $10,000.
Wow!
And it was great. It was like more money than I was making doing other things in my life, and it was easy to do. And that became something that then ended when I ended up doing my radio show nightly in the late 90s. I started to do the podcast after the show every night. And so it was not safe for work. And long before NSFW actually became an acronym, if we had somebody who had to behave themselves because I was on terrestrial radio and, we couldn't swear or anything like that, if they had to behave themselves during the last hour of the show, then they would spend the next 10 minutes and 43 seconds after the show was over just being themselves. So it was great. And, I'm very proud of the fact that, I did this way before the wave happened and before Dave Weiner added, enclosures to the RSS spec so that everybody else could do, a much easier way of getting things to people. And, I speak at New Media Expo and at the old Podcast and Portable Media Conference. And, I'm very active in the podcasting community. And I love when podcasting keeps coming back. It keeps, being this cottage industry that keeps reinventing itself. And it's funny, each wave forgets that the wave prior did some really good work. Like, nobody talks about Adam Curry anymore. Nobody talks about, the podcasts that were so famous in the first wave of podcasting. And nobody remembers when Brian Cooley and I were, quote unquote, podcasting back in the 90s. But I love the fact that you guys have, found a niche and created a podcast around it. And I'm happy to help add to your legend.
Well, thank you very much.
So how did you make the jump from radio host to actor? Did you always want to be an actor, or was your heart in radio always?
So I lived on the East Coast, and my whole life I did radio, and I'd always wanted to be an actor, but never had either the ability or the real urge to make the move to New York or Los Angeles to follow that side of things. And, I'm a chubby guy. So there was a part of me that was like, oh, nobody would want to hire me. I'm not a good looking guy, blah, 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 blah. And then, as I got older, I realized, I started doing much more research on it, and I realized there was room for anybody. And I'm not that bad looking. It's, I don't turn, little kids into stone. The truth of the matter is that if the weather in Washington, D.C., if they knew what to do about bad weather more effectively, I might not have ever come to L.A. One weekend in, I think it was March of 2003, I was in Florida, not in D.C., but in Florida at a weekend trip. And I said, before we go back to Maryland, we better check the Weather Channel and see if there's any bad weather because it's March. And, sure enough, there was a big storm sitting on the Chesapeake Bay, and Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland are two cities that are in complete denial about where they are latitude-wise. They think they're in the deep south and they don't need snow removal. And the truth of the matter is that every year for at least a week, a bad snowstorm will pummel the area and shut down the city. And they don't care. They will not buy snow removal equipment. They will not buy salt. They will not buy blades. It's one guy with a truck named Joe who's got a plow, and that's it. And when I worked on radio in D.C., I wasn't allowed to say the word snow until it was already snowing. If they heard the word snow and it wasn't snowing yet, they would abandon their cars on the Beltway. They would clear the shelves of the Social Safeway of all staples, toilet paper, bananas, milk. They're gone, right? Even if it was just going to be a light sprinkling, because you never know. And so we were stuck in Tampa for 3 days, and then when we finally got home, they had to, dig my car out of the snow drift it was in at the airport. And when I came home, I found that they had snow blown all the snow up against my bay window. Oh. So I put my suitcase inside the door, and I went back to the car to get my other suitcase, and the door swung shut, and the vibration shattered the bay window, and all of the glass and the snow and everything came into my living room. And I'm like, I am so done with this. I could do my radio show anywhere I wanted, right? I happened to be doing it from my home and in a really well-outfitted, second bedroom that, from the outside you'd never know was actually in there. Same thing now. Nobody knows that I have this beautiful studio here in my home. And so I would, I said, it doesn't matter where we do the show, so let's find a place somewhere better. I'll trade this for earthquakes and wildfires and coyotes and and I thought maybe I'll give acting.
Don't give mudslides.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things here, mudslides, people who are vegans, there's a lot of hazards in the area. So, but yeah, no, I love it here, and I certainly decided that if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. And so I did an awful lot of research on what best practices were, how the industry worked. I worked for 4 years just trying to figure out who did what, who greenlit what, who made what decisions, as opposed to what everybody thinks. And then
Just
once
come out
I
and be discovered.
well, partly, it's like there are a lot of people that arrive here from MFA or BFA programs at prestigious universities from around the world, and they alight at the airport or at the bus station, and they basically stand there and they wait for people to find them. It's like, I'm here. Where's my series regular role? Where's my agent, my manager? I have these headshots I took in Dubuque. They're awesome. And then there's this re-education process that occurs, because anytime you drop into an environment that you're not familiar with, it's a good idea, even though you think you know how things work, to just sort of shut up and listen and see what is actually going on, then make some educated choices about how you're going to proceed. And so that's what I did. It's called the Abraham Lincoln method. He said that, if he had an hour to chop down a tree, he'd spend the first 45 minutes sharpening the axe. And that's what I did. I volunteered and I networked and I took classes and I workshopped and I, went to mixers and events and any breakfasts, industry breakfasts, anything I could possibly lay my hands on to find out how the industry worked before I started trying to work in the industry.
Mm-hmm. So you basically did the grunt work to begin with and just didn't expect it to be handed to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't ever expect anything to be handed to me, although I would like you to hand me a drink.
Oh, no, I can't.
Nice scotch, neat, be nice.
Fair enough.
Not really.
So you've worked in loads of different mediums, like from radio to podcasting, TV, film, and also audiobooks. Which is your favorite medium to work in?
I really don't have a favorite. I mean, I enjoy different parts of everything. I love doing audiobooks. I've done a lot of audiobooks, and I love that sort of solitary, quiet, centered existence when you're doing an audiobook. You're just in the studio for hours at a time, and you're bringing a story to life. It's pure storytelling at its best. And I love that. I love the idea of having to have certain technical expertise in all these areas. The way you play a radio mic is very different from the way you play a mic in audiobooks, and it's very different from the way you use sound and take advantage of sound on a set or in a film or on stage. I just got finished doing an audiobook called Secrets of Screen Acting, which was for the book Secrets of Screen Acting that truly changed everything about my career. I was only supposed to do one episode of Heroes, and knowing what I knew from Secrets of Screen Acting was in no small measure the reason that they rewrote my ending while I was working on set, and I ended up being a recurring character. Knowing the technical nature of your work, and that technical nature changes depending upon what you're doing. Knowing the technical nature and being a master at it, or at least mastering what you need to work in that particular medium, is so important. And it's one of those things that some actors never quite get to do. So, yeah. So I like it all. I'd love to work on Broadway. I auditioned for Uncle Fester and the Addams Family, and that was a great process. This is the only thing I've ever auditioned for on Broadway. And so I'd love to do that. But yeah, I've done almost everything else.
You just said you were originally only meant to be for that one season of Heroes, and they...
hold on. Just that one episode.
That one episode. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
just one episode. All of the people in season 3 which was called Heroes Villains.
Yeah.
They spent every episode discovering and then dispatching with a new villain, right?
Yes.
So, Stephen, was the Void villain, and he voided himself, which sounds very, very disgusting. Every villain was introduced, scared the pants off the audience, and then somebody took care of them.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to happen to me too in the original version of the script.
Okay.
When I physically force Claire's mother, her stepmother, to shoot her, and then she puts the gun back down on the table. Claire, instead of standing up and hitting me over the head with a chair leg, she was supposed to pick the gun up off the table and shoot me in the back of the head.
Oh.
Because I didn't know she was a regen, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was the first 6 hours of shooting or so occurred, which was the dance scenes with Meredith, and the scenes where Claire and her mom are looking for her, and they find her, and I hear them, and the dinner and the breakfast
Yeah.
scenes, because Daddy got some, right? He first had dinner and then got some, and then he had breakfast. So those scenes were the scenes that we shot first. And we started at like 7 a.m. on that Monday, which is July 8th, 2008. Not that I remember the date perfectly. Around noon, I noticed that the writers were gone. I'd gone back to chairs in the Video Village, and they weren't there, nor was the executive producer. And they came back around 5 o'clock, and they said, "We have some new sides for you."
Ooh.
Actually, what Jeff Loeb, who's now the head of television at Marvel, said is, "David, hey, we need to talk." And you don't want to hear that phrase said in that way on the very first job you've ever gotten in television. It's like, oh man, how did I screw this up? They're firing me the first day. And he just took me to a side room, and he and the writer said, "Hey, we have some new sides for you for Wednesday." And I read and read and read. And then finally I got to the part where it changed, and that was they weren't going to kill me.
Yeah.
And like I blurted out, wait a minute. I practiced my death scene all weekend. What do you know? And so that was a change that came from, I think, them seeing things that they didn't even have an idea would be in the words that they had written. And that became, one of those great characters that, just changes your life as an actor. So
and also you were the only one from the villains who actually made it out and carried on throughout the rest of the seasons. You were in like pretty much all the volumes from volume 3. So
I wasn't supposed to be in volume. I wasn't supposed to be in volume 5.
Okay.
But you guys got me into volume 5. Trust me. Not you two personally. I don't think you had anything to do with it. But the fans that showed up at Comic-Con, at San Diego Comic-Con, the summer before volume 5, when they opened it up for questions on the floor, the very first question was, "Are you bringing the Puppet Master back? Where's the Puppet Master? I don't see him on stage." And so Tim knew that I was standing off to the side with the rest of the people that were kind of like, I was in line. I was in line as a fan. I thought I was done. I didn't know. And as they all passed me by, Foz, who was one of the unit production managers, he said, "What are you doing? Come with us." So we went backstage, and it was great because I hadn't seen a lot of the people since earlier that year when we'd finished up volume 4, which was
Fugitives.
Thank you. So I was backstage, and then they said, "Come on out. We're going to have everybody else stand off to the side." So when they asked that question, Tim goes, "Well, he's right over there, standing O." Nice. And then a lot of people crowded around me afterwards and asked for autographs and what am I doing and how are things going, and I saw you on Disney. And so as Tim and his assistant walked by, they noticed that, I think, because as I actually left to go back to the convention center, this was at the Hilton nearby, and we went back to the convention center, Tim grabbed me and said, "I had no idea that people liked you this much." So starting with I think they were on episode 5 or something like that. Starting on episode 5, Samuel found me.
Yes.
And he brought me into the circus carnival.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Speaking of which, that kind of brings us up to Nowhere Man, which is like one of the best sets of webisodes in Heroes of Crime.
That's very sweet of you. That was fun.
It's well thought out. It's a different kind of. It's very different from all the other ones, and I think because it's
I love it.
Personal connection.
Yeah. I got the girl.
Yes,
I was so
exactly.
happy. I was like, "Is there a kissing scene or a sex scene that I have to prepare for at all? By any chance, is there?" It was great fun, and then I got a chance to work with some really great actors, and it kind of bridged the story between what happened in one volume and the next. And it made for some explanations, and so it was lots of fun, and we shot that all in one weekend. And there was a time when Tim came to set, and he sat down. He said, "Let's do a video," and we sat down, and he just like went on and on and on about how great I was, and he told the story of how they changed the script, and it was so sweet and so awesome, and I've been really fortunate to have some great moments like that in my life.
Did
you happen to know why you can't find them on the web anywhere? Like completely scrubbed.
I don't know. I mean, I feel kind of like Winnie the Pooh sometimes when he says, "My brain is full." Like I've got so much stuff going on in my life. It's like, okay, where are all the videos from Nowhere Man? I mean, I've got a copy on DVD, and so I've got them. But I don't know. I think it must have something to do with the rights and So even though it was done under the new media contract, so it's not like, the union contract for new media. So I don't think they owe us any residuals. So, I don't know why it's not available. I'm sorry, Lilith.
We look so hard for him to share with our audience.
Yeah. Your last name is Hellfire. Is that right?
Yes.
Are you a member of the Des Moines Hellfire family? The fighting Hellfires from professional wrestling? No. What how is Hellfire a stage name?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. That's a great stage name. It would be perfect for like if you were a burlesque dancer, right? You could like, do fire and juggling and all that stuff. But I'm sure there's another much better explanation for why it's Hellfire. Can you tell me what that is?
The Hellfire Club from Hellboy.
From Hellboy. Okay.
Reference.
Oh, got it. Okay. Perfect for our Heroes podcast. That's great.
Yeah, I'm very big into comic books. Are you? Since it's like kind of a comic booky show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, the funny thing is that I'm probably the biggest fan that ever got an acting job on Heroes.
Yeah.
Trust me. From the moment Claire said, "Watch this," and jumped off the trestle while her friend was filming, from the moment that, Hiro stopped the clock.
Yes.
Made it go backwards. From the moment that show was on the air, I was their biggest, at least their widest fan. I mean, I loved that show. And when I got the call from my agent saying, hey, they want you to come in for an audition, I'm like, oh, this is great. I know this show. And it was awesome. It was great. And every time I would be on set, there was a part of me that's like, wait. In episode 7, they, but I kept my mouth shut because they had a plan. They knew what they were doing. So yeah, I was, and before that, I was a huge fan. I was actually a comic book collector when I was a kid. Not a collector in terms of I would like a pristine, uncirculated copy of volume 1 of Amazing Spider-Man for $500,000. I just had stacks and stacks and stacks of comic books in my bedroom, and it was a fire hazard. It was bad. So yeah, I was a graphic novel and a comic book fan from the time I was a wee man. So absolutely.
Did you read any of the online graphic novels that came along with the Heroes at the time?
Yeah, and I read a lot of the fan fiction, and especially the fan fiction where I was having sex with beautiful women. I was as happy as a clam when I was on that show. I mean. Yeah, I love the idea of being in that universe. I loved their storytelling skills. I loved the people that I was working with. I mean, who in their right mind gets to spend 45 minutes laying on top of Kristen Bell? Me, this guy. Because, there was a scene that they cut out of one of the episodes where I attacked her on the way out of level 5. And, she was unable to do anything about it. And so, it was one of those moments where you go, I'm really sorry about this. She's like, it's okay. So, I mean, just so many things happened during that period of my life that were just fantastic. I just, I can't tell you. I mean, going to London and going to MCM.
Yes.
And, being out on the Thames what's the name of that center out on the Thames opposite the hotel that you walk across the causeway? What is that?
I have no idea.
You don't have any idea. Don't you live there?
Yeah, I live here, but it's like
what's that? You walk out on this wide causeway to this big building, and it's called something, the Exposition Center, or I forget.
Yeah.
The thing was, we stayed at the hotel on the other end of the causeway, and they picked us up, and we walked across with the people who were running because it was me and Greg Grunberg and Bria Grant and Andre and a couple other people that were on that season, and. Our episodes hadn't even aired yet on 3 or on 1.
It was BBC, yeah.
Well, it was 3 first, and then they would air it on 1, but 1 was HD at the time, and the other one wasn't, or 1 was digital or something. I don't know. But they weren't in sync, like they were later on. They were like 2 or 3 weeks behind. And so my episode had just aired the night before in the States, and I jumped on a plane to come to London. So I knew it hadn't aired yet in the UK. But that following Saturday, somehow this crowd formed around us, and they were all making the puppet master finger moves at me. And I'm like, how the hell do you know what's going on? They haven't even aired it yet. And, it was the internet. It was, everybody downloading it illegally. So, So I just love everything about the whole being involved in that whole thing. So
I've got a question from one of our fans. They're just asking, how did you prepare for the role of Doyle? And obviously, what was your interpretation of Doyle? Did you see him as a hero, a villain, or just that morally grey?
When you do any character as an actor, you can't negatively judge that character. You just can't, because you'll consistently say no to all of your best choices. So you have to fall in love with the character no matter what that character is all about. And in Doyle's case, he just wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a drinking game on the show. Whenever Doyle said, I just want to be normal, you take a drink, and by the time the show's over, you're drunk. But Doyle wanted to be a normal person, didn't realize that. I mean, the backstory to Doyle is he found out that he could control other people when he was angry.
Yeah.
When he got angry as a child. Do you know his backstory? Do you know how he discovered his power and what he did?
I remember little bits and pieces. Like, I know he was in level 5 because he had been using his powers, and no one could ever really say that it was him, but obviously the company found him. So.
Well, the reason that he originally found out he had powers at all was when he was a kid.
Okay.
And he was shipped off to live with his uncle by parents who didn't want him, and his uncle was abusive. Mm-hmm. And one day he wanted so bad, he was at the beach, and so bad he wanted his uncle to leave him alone. And he looked at his uncle and just raised his hands and was pretending to push him further out into the water. And his uncle started swimming out in the water, and he kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And he made his uncle swim so far that he couldn't swim back.
Wow. And
he drowned. So he made him swim past the point of no return. And he realized that he had this power, and then started working on, and so he had it when he was angry, and he had it when he was frustrated, and he tried to use it for good in things like Nowhere Man, which he did. And he just wanted to be one of the good guys, but he couldn't help himself. He just couldn't help himself. And they made him really nasty when he was controlling the cello player.
Emma.
Yeah. And he had his comeuppance. The really cool thing though was we didn't know we were being canceled.
Yeah.
The last page of the last script in the last episode said, we cut to Doyle, who is shown to be very much alive. Mm-hmm. And, there was a great deal of joy in the palatial Lawrence estate because, he was going to be part of Volume 6, which was called Brave New World, right?
Yes.
So, and it was going to be so cool. And I think part of that is what's going on with Heroes Reborn plus 10 years, right?
Yes.
So they're well known, they're discriminated against. I mean, you'll see, I'm sure, that what they had in mind for season 5 or volume 6, they're going to be putting to some use in Heroes Reborn, I imagine.
Yes.
I really can't say for sure, and if I did know, I wouldn't be able to say
exactly.
Anyway,
yeah. Well, in my mind, it was you and your character and Siler were very similar in the fact that you always had. Well, Siler had the hunger. It was like his power overtook him at times, and I really found that interesting. And it was only really kind of played up more in kind of the graphic novels and the webisodes, and not really more in the show. So yeah.
Yep.
And also, it seemed like you and Siler you'd always get your comeuppance via Siler.
I was the wannabe lead villain. He was the lead villain. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And to answer the question of how I prepared, I would read the script and I would say, okay, here's the role that I'm playing in the hierarchy of these characters. And it was never the role that Siler played or that Claire played. I mean, Siler was the uber villain. Yeah. He was the super villain. He was the Green Goblin. He was the Doc Ock. He was the guy that was never going to get killed, or even if he did, he would come back in ghost form. I mean, they're never going to get rid of him. I play Mole Man on Hulk and the Agents of Smash on Disney XD. Yeah, and so he's one that's never going to die either. He's an uber villain. Like none of the main villains ever actually die. They sometimes pretend to die, or you think they're dead, but then somehow they always show up with an explanation about how they got out. Like, do you watch Gotham?
Yeah.
I'm one of the few people left that do appointment viewing. Like, I sit there at 8:59, and okay, Gotham is next. The role that I would play was the villain in struggle. The huggable, likable, but villainous guy who's struggling with his identity, and it was easy to do. It was natural, and I could identify. It's like, what is my life all about? What am I trying to accomplish? These are questions that everybody asks themselves in one way or another, unless they're just completely daft. And so, you just ask them in favor of the character, and that makes preparing so much easier. It's not like I sit there, like, I feel really bad for actors that need to spend an inordinate amount of time to become sad. I worked with a woman on a film once who, whenever she was doing her crying scenes, she would have to go listen to Enya for an hour and then come back already in tears. And, that means you don't get the scene that really is the most powerful. And the scene that's really the most powerful is when somebody is on the verge of tears or when somebody bursts into tears. It's not the streaked makeup down the face. That's actually not very, appealing. It's that moment when somebody is in such turmoil. And there was a scene where when I showed up in Claire's kitchen. Yeah. And, that's what I'm one of these people who's just highly emotional. My testosterone levels are like -4. Yeah. So, I cry at the drop of a hat. You show me that video where the dog is like trying to make it up to his master by hugging him. And I'm like, oh, look at the puppy, so, I think people think that actors spend a long time preparing. And for certain roles, you have to. I mean, if you're going to lose 60 pounds and get cut like Jake Gyllenhaal in Southpaw, you're going to have to spend a lot of time, quote unquote, preparing physically as well as mentally. But, this character was real easy to step into because, I'm a creepy, evil villain in real life. Yeah. I am. It's just really easy to step into and a lot of fun to play because, villains all have the funny lines. Yes. They, the heroes have to be quiet. They have to be quiet and contemplative and hold their, bite their tongue and hold back their emotions so that they're not, they don't make a stupid mistake. Whereas villains are like, they got the best guns and the most beautiful chicks and the awesomest lairs and, the best lines in the show. I mean, it's the best. It's just the best.
Awesome. Did you have any input into the character at any point?
Here's the thing. Anybody that tells you they had input on the character is lying to you unless they're an executive producer of the show. I'll tell you, Kiefer Sutherland, he's got input on Jack Bauer. Me and everybody else who plays anything other than the leads or the really high-end, series regular characters, you got nothing. And you don't need anything. You're there to serve a purpose. You don't make choices. You get your script and you do what you're told, period. The writers are the superstars, and they rightfully so. My job is to take their words and interpret it in ways that make them happy. That's my job as an actor, period. My job is not to take the director's side and go, hey, listen, I'm not sure the character would say this, so can we try it? I don't do that. I wouldn't dream of doing that. I wouldn't dream of doing that if I was number one on the call sheet and it was the David Lawrence show. I just wouldn't do that. It's like I'm a writer, but I'm not the writers. Writers are hired to do the job. I'm hired to do my job. My job is not to rewrite their script. My job is not to tell the director I have questions or comments or suggestions I just find that amazingly egotistical. If you want to be a writer, go be a writer. If you want to be a writer-actor, go be a writer-actor. If you're the person that created the show, if you're Drew Carey or you're Whitney or you're, Seinfeld, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But if you're a guy that was brought in to audition for a part and the part turns out to be awesome, your job is not to then let this go to your head and start going back to chairs and saying, about this next scene, I can't tell you how off-putting that is to me and how it just turns my stomach. It's so disrespectful to the people who are being paid a lot more than me to write the show. It's just my job is to do what I do. And what I do is to take words on a page and make it just sing on camera. That's my job. So, no, I didn't have any input. If they were looking for input, they would have come to me and I would have said, you know what, whatever you want, man, it's fine with me. You know, if they say, no, we really want your opinion on this, I would tell them. But for me to go and volunteer and say, I'd like to do this, not a chance. And I don't think they ever came to me and said, so do you think Eric would do this? And I'm like, yeah, I just don't. They had a Bible. You know, every show has a Bible. And the Bible very clearly pointed out what Eric Doyle was all about. And, you know, it was pretty logical. And, you know, that's the joy of writing, is you can take logic and turn it on its head. But no, I never had any choices.
Okay.
Okay, so, like, I'm a huge Lost fan as well as a huge Heroes fan. And I remember, like, in the 6th season when you were the taxi cab driver, you tweeted it out, the whole Heroes fandom was like, yes! And then, I forget, was it Carlton? They were like, oh, you're supposed to keep that a secret. But, like, with Heroes, we don't really keep secrets. Like, we're all excited to see our returning guests and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Lost, it was like this big lockdown set.
I don't think I would have tweeted it out before it aired. Because I signed a lot of NDAs. I signed a lot of NDAs with Heroes. And although when we did Nowhere Man, they were encouraging me to tweet live from set.
Okay.
So if they say tweet, no, I'm a big, you know, on, you know, there are actor-related private Facebook groups, for example. And I'm on a couple of them, both as an administrator and as a contributor and as a, you know, just a subscriber. You know, it depends on the level of the group. And I'm always privately messaging people when they go, "Hey, I'm going to be on The Good Wife this Sunday night." It's like, you know, do you remember signing those NDAs? You sat in your trailer and you filled out your start paperwork. Do you remember signing all that stuff? They weren't kidding. Did you notice what the penalties were? Do you want to spend, you know, $5,000 or $10,000 of your money repaying them based on the penalty? You know, STFU, you know? And even when they lie to me and say, oh, no, they said it was okay. I'm like, look, you know, you can talk to some dude that just came off the turnip truck and you can tell him that. But I know what it's like to work on set. And I know that since 2011 or 12, you know, it used to have like maybe 1/8 of an inch, maybe 5 sheets of paper that I would fill out when I would start a job. My contract and, you know, some sort of a, you know, sexual harassment thing that I would have to sign and say, yes, I understand the rules, you know. Now it's like you're buying a house. There's 1 inch worth of paperwork, much of which is non-disclosure agreements and social media policy agreements. And it's like, it's very clear they don't want you to do that. So, I mean, it would maybe if it had been the night that it aired, the moment that it aired, I would have tweeted something out. But I didn't tweet out ahead of time, I don't think. Others may have. I know there were some people working on the set that did some tweeting and got in trouble for it.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But your name was attached to it. But I was just like, yeah, because Lost was always like super, super secretive. But Heroes was like a little. I felt like it was like a little more relaxed, and because you know.
Well, I think they
had a lot of returning people.
Yeah, they changed their policy over time because of what happened with downloads versus appointment viewing and plus 7 viewing, which, as you know, is the reason that Heroes was canceled. It wasn't because, you know, I mean, it was a very expensive show to produce. And within moments of it airing, people would grab it and they would take out the commercials and they would torrent it. And so after a while, advertisers are like, look, your appointment viewing and your plus 7 viewing is where the illegal downloads were 5 seasons ago. It was like this crossing of graph lines between 14 million appointment views per episode in the first season down to 2 or 3 or 4 in the last season. And, you know, less than 1 million illegal downloads in the first season, all the way up to 14 to 20 million in the last season. And so advertisers are like, what are we paying for here? You know, so this idea that they've managed to figure out that beast, the social network and the streaming beast, and, you know, make it work for them is great. So, but in that day, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to deal with that. So NBC was like, look, we can't afford to do this anymore. They dropped the budgets of those shows down tremendously in the 5th season. And they still managed to make beautiful magic with those episodes. So, wait, what did you want to ask about Lost?
Like, I just remember, like, that being, like, just like, oh, fandom collision moment. And it was a small scene, but did you like it? Was it fun?
Yeah.
Did you like Lost?
I loved Lost. I mean, you know, me and Jelko Ivanek and Greg Grunberg, I think, are the only 3 people that were on both series. In fact, you know, when I first met the casting director for Lost, it was in a workshop, and one of the questions that people asked was, are there any shows that are on television right now that you blacklist actors from when considering people for your show? And she goes, well, Heroes. And so I made a big show of gathering up all my stuff. And she goes, "Are you on that show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "I'm so sorry." And the next day she called me in.
Oh,
And then the next day I booked the part.
nice.
And so, this was a 3-week workshop. And by the second week, I'd already booked it. And I came back and she goes, "We really don't have to do anything here because you already booked the part. So, like, do you want to even do your scene for me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What the hell?" So we became better friends. And, that's what you want to do in any business is meet your customers. And as an actor, your customers, your first level customers are your casting directors, and your second level customers are the writers and the producers and the directors that create the scripts and the work, to do this crazy industry we're in. Those are it's like there's the lead buyers at Lowe's and there are the assistant buyers at Lowe's. If you're a plumbing supply salesman, right? You need to go find all the people that can purchase what you do or what you have. And so for me, I just approach this business the way I approach every business, and that is as a business with a customer base and a product and a marketing effort and an advertising effort and the technology that is required. I'm working on a training series right now called Art, Commerce, Science. And what I learned about the most successful actors in the business is that they're not only good at acting, but they're also good at, that's the art of it. But they're also good at the commerce and the tech of it and the science of it. So they're good at business. They're good business people. They make good business decisions, or they surround themselves with people that make good business decisions on their behalf. And they understand the technology. They know how to work with the technology that's required. Today, almost everything, there's an option to self-tape. And so you got to know how to do that. If we were doing a video podcast right now, I would look gorgeous in my house because I have studio lighting in my house. And when I put things up, when I do things like this, I do it in a way that makes it look great. It looks as good as if not better than when I go to a casting director's office to be on tape there. So understanding those three things, I think, are the difference between not being successful and being successful. Treating it like a business all the way through.
Well, you definitely have the business aspect of it down. I love your VO to go, like the voiceover acting stuff is really great. Your website is so minimalistic, but also very informative. And the rehearsal app, oh my God. Did you come up with that and actually work with the people with the software? Did you just hire people to fulfill that particular thing?
So I storyboarded it, I wireframed it, and then I looked around for a while to find someone who could work with me on the coding. And I actually found a Heroes fan who did beautiful games, and he made it look awesome and he did exactly what I wanted. And I built the app around how we as professional actors work. And, it's funny because all of my competitors, I believe, are pretty much either amateur actors or not actors at all. And they don't understand the process that we go through in the major production centers to get auditions and to get work and how that flow actually occurs. Because all of them kind of fall down in the process somewhere. Like it's hard to get scripts into some of them. It's hard to figure out how to use some of them. It's hard to figure out how to keep track of your scripts in some of them. But yeah, that was something that happened to me when I was I was headed to an audition for Community, which is a show that was also on NBC. If you want to see the whole story, I actually recreated it for the pitch video. I'm running an Indiegogo campaign right now, which I'd love anybody who's interested in rehearsal to go and back.
Yes.
There's some great perks for you to find there, some of which include working with me. But what I did for the pitch video, which is the video that you see at the top of every project or every campaign on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter, is I actually recreated me being in my car at my agent's office and driving down the 101 trying to find, I don't know if you're an iPhone user, but if you are, then you know that Voice Memo has a play button, but it's a soft button on the screen. And I had to look for it and not watch traffic, and I got killed a couple of times, but I came back because I'm a hero. But then as I got to Paramount, I was driving onto the lot. My agent called and said, don't worry about it. They wrote the part out.
No.
So, but it was okay because on the way down, I'm thinking there has to be an app for this. And so there was, and it sucked badly. It was horrible. And so I said, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to do this. I can use technology to make things better. And I did. And that app has, 144,000 downloads, 77,000 users, 44,000 users that use it at least once a month. And, it's become an industry standard. Every time I turn around, somebody new is saying, oh, my God, I love this app. Over there in the UK, I don't know what this magazine is. It has an Italian name. But Kevin Bacon was like, here's one of the things that I rely on. This is in my toolbox. And Juliana Margulies, who's on The Good Wife and was on ER, they did an interview for all the Emmy nominees a couple of years ago, and all of the women in this round table were bitching about how many lines they had to learn each night, and then when they'd come in, they'd have changed them. And Juliana Margulies goes, honey, do you not know about rehearsal?
Nice.
Did you not hear about it? It's on your iPad. You don't need to go through all that. And what? So it was great. So then, a year later, all of these other women are using, and two of them are like, oh yeah, I use rehearsal, And I'm like, what? They do what? Rita Wilson, who's Tom Hanks' wife. Rita Wilson is an actor in a lot of different series, and she tells everybody about it. Nice. Everybody. And so I'll talk to somebody down at the Union Hall, and it's like, oh yeah, I heard about your app from John Carroll Lynch or Rita Wilson or whoever, nice. John C. Reilly, Clark Gregg on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Director Coulson now. Coulson lives, and Coulson uses rehearsal. Nice. So I love that it's become an industry standard. We're doing a new version called Rehearsal Pro. And I'd love for you to go check it out, ig.me/@/rehearsal. Or just go to Indiegogo and search for rehearsal. You'll find it. Mm-hmm. We're creating a really great new version of rehearsal that's going to do a lot for stage work and a lot more for television work. We're really excited about it.
And will you be making an Android version as well?
Oh, no.
Oh.
I say that now, and I say that based on pure business principles. The whole Android marketplace is so rife with piracy that, and it's so much more expensive to develop for Android that it just doesn't make sense right now. But I'm at every turn, Android users are asking me for the app, and I can't seem to figure out a way to do it. If I do, believe me, I know that there are so many devices out there. That
the Samsung 6 is basically the iPhone now. They're all running so similar.
Yeah. So, the problem is, the main problem, aside from piracy, is the universe in which you program for. So with iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, you're talking about maybe 12 to 15 different screen aspect ratios and sizes and pixel depths. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about Android, oh my God, you're talking about 500 to 700, depending upon what you count, 500 to 700 different devices, and then different models within those device categories, and it becomes a nightmare. Plus, there's a certain technical thing for Android where if you're going to do any work with PDFs, which are the main ways that we get our scripts these days, they're not printed and messengered to us like in the old days. Anything you do on an Android app with PDFs, you have to license per copy. And so we'd have to keep track, and it would be expensive. And so there's a lot of reasons why we could do it and would want to do it if I can figure out how to get past all these other things. But right now my plate's pretty full with my acting and my voice work and training and
your classes, which I'm going to take one eventually.
Yeah? Anybody can take a class with me for free. You go to votogogo.com/start. And that's my free Getting Started in Voiceover class. It's a 10-lesson class. It's all done online. But when you turn in your homework and you turn in your audition and your voice work, you're actually not sending it to a computer somewhere. You're sending it to me. And I go back and forth with you via email, and I listen to your stuff, and I give you feedback and adjustments. And, so it's a free class. And if you ever wanted to know what it really takes to be in the world of voiceover, this class will give you more information than a lot of classes that charge money. So it's vo2gogo.com. That's vo, the numeral 2, gogo.com/start, as in getting started in voiceover.
Yeah, I thought a lot of good tips about your home setup, too, that I could implement for podcasting. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Voiceover and podcasting, very similar. Lots of great information. Encourage everybody to check out.
Yeah, podcasting is a category of voice work these days. It's not like a separate cousin, the separate bastard child cousin that it used to be. And you can use the exact same equipment. What I'm talking to you on right now is an AT2020 USB Plus, and it makes me sound great. It works just fine for work as opposed to just auditions. And yeah, you'll learn. In fact, I give away the store in the Getting Started class. I tell you what equipment to buy. I tell you what you're going to need to do in terms of demos, what you're going to need to do in terms of the art, the commerce, and the science of voice work. I mean, it's pretty much, everything you need to know about what to do to become a voiceover talent. And then from there, if you want to study with me, there are 36 other classes in various categories of voice work and voice business and voice technology that we go a lot deeper in. But this class has gotten a lot of people started on their careers.
Very nice of you.
Yeah.
I've got a couple more questions, just some Twitter questions from some of our fans. They just want to know some things about your time on Heroes. What was your favourite volume to be in of Heroes? You've got...
I liked them all. I mean, obviously the first one is very special to me because, it's where I started. It's I got a chance to kiss Jessalyn Gilsig.
Yeah.
Off camera, we had sex. No, I mean, in the story we did, but I never. No, I was very. She's such a sweet person, and working with Hayden and working with Zach and working with
the Knepp, Robert Knepper.
Working with him in the Carnival season, that was great. Working with Jack all the way through as HRG, it's just, and you know what? I knew he was going to be the first one they called.
Yeah, they
love him. Oh my God, he is like the golden boy there. They love him, and for good reason. He's just an excellent actor. I mean, I don't know if you're a Scandal freak. I don't know if you like the show Scandal, but he was great on Scandal. I mean, as the vice president's husband, who was really gay, and I mean, he's just a consummate actor, and he's just a consummate artist as well in terms of how he handles himself on set and what he does and how he does it. I mean, there's a reason why people want to work with actors like that, is because they know exactly what they're doing, and they make you look great. So I think if I were to pick one, I love that whole feeling. I just, you can imagine when somebody calls you, when your agent calls and says, "Hey, you booked the role," and then you're like, "Oh, that's great," and then you realize that you're getting on the most popular, most expensive television show ever, and you're playing a villain. And it's awesome, and it gets even more awesome. When I was shooting that first episode, it was in the dead of summer. It was like 109 degrees in that Knights of Columbus hall that they had outfitted as my puppet theater. And there was one guy who was my best friend. They had set up air conditioning and refrigeration stations outside, and then they had these big, huge air ducts. And his job was to walk around and follow me and reposition the air duct so I had air conditioning inside that place. And he would follow me around with this big, huge, circular tube, thing that was flexible. And man, he was like my best friend. And like I like somebody would come up to me every 5 or 10 minutes and say, "Do you need water?"
Nice.
And it's dangerous because you can get used to that, And I kept telling myself, this isn't going to last forever. I mean, it might last a good long time, but it's not going to be forever. So don't get comfortable here. Remember your roots. Remember you're from the Midwest. Remember you're from Cleveland. So yeah, I think that feeling was just and it was so much fun. Yeah. It was just so much fun. Nice. So yeah, it was great.
Okay, and one last question I have is, obviously, I'm sure you've been asked this a lot, but if you had to have any ability, whether it be in Heroes or not, which one would you have?
I have the ability that I would want and have. I already have it. I can tell a great story.
Yeah.
I can make people laugh. I can make people cry. I can make people change their opinions on things. I can make people give me money. So I guess maybe I already have the puppet master's techniques, but rather than being through my fingers and controlling them that way, it's telling a story that motivates them to think and feel and do those things. And I think that is more powerful than any potential, I'd love to be able to fly. I'd love to be invisible. I'd love to be, a regen. I'd love to, never die. I mean, although after a while, I think I'd be a burden on society. But, I mean, I love all those things. But I think the idea that we all have a superpower inside us and we all can find that superpower. And if we're true to ourselves and we follow our passion and we prepare for the success that following that passion can lead to, we'll want for nothing. And I don't have a desire for a superpower that I can, that I have to go, get injected with. I mean, I feel like the superpower that I've developed to tell a story and to help others achieve their success in that space is ultimately the best possible superpower I could have.
Amazing answer.
It's a really good
That's
sentiment.
the best answer you're ever going to get from anybody sitting in this chair. Let me tell you. I know that for a fact.
I'd just like to thank the following people who gave us our questions. I have Peter Rose from Twitter, Felicia from Twitter, Mary Baker from Facebook, and Francisca Beck from Twitter. We will give you all shout outs when we release this podcast.
All right, time to wrap it up. But of course, we should let Mr. Lawrence do some shameless plugs and self-promotion if he has anything else he would like to add.
Yeah, if you want to learn voiceover, I'm happy to help you with that. Go to votogogo.com/start. But do go check out, if you're at all involved in this industry and you do any acting, go check out Rehearsal. The website is rehearsal.pro, and it'll lead you right to the Indiegogo campaign. The Indiegogo campaign, the short code for that is igg.me/@/rehearsal. And, I just appreciate you listening, and I appreciate your support, and I really appreciate the questions and just asking me to be here. That's very sweet of you.
Thank you very much for coming on.